Welcome to Evolving Door, the podcast where I interview guests about the moments in their lives that have really moved them forwards, where they had a significant shift in their thinking, their awareness, and their understanding about life in all its various aspects. Join me and expect to be enlivened, enriched, and inspired on your personal journey of evolution. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode with Shetty. If you're enjoying the episode, if you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It's so encouraging to read your responses and to hear what you're learning and what you're taking away. So let's dive straight back in where we left off and hear Jay's answer. She sort of felt that, yes, I believe the vibration and the energy and the timeless wisdom that I'm sharing is worth sharing, but I'm just not sure if I'm the right person to do it. Did you ever... Did anything like that ever cross your mind, or did you feel like, no, I'm going to go for it?
I think I definitely felt that when I started, when I was 18, and I was like, what do I know at 18? I have zero life experience, and how can I talk about life? And that's where my confidence was definitely more in the text that I was sharing from and in the philosophy and the psychology. And what I started to realize is everyone has a different path in what they do. So for example, and this is what we realized at the HuffPost, that there were videos that were made by deep experts that would not get views. And there were videos made about that content from other people, not just me, that would get views. And what I realized is that there's a difference between someone who studies and someone who curates really well. And there's a difference between someone who deeply goes into something and someone who synthesizes really well. And I realized very early on that my vision was twofold. One was a quote that's attributed to Ivan Pavlov and Martin Luther King and others as well, which is, if you want a new idea, read an old book. And I fell in love with that. And I was just like, okay, that's something that I can find fascination and curiosity in. And the second one was a statement from Albert Einstein, where he said that if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And so for me, I've always been reading about neuroscience and behavioral science and the mind and the brain, and sometimes that stuff can be really hard to understand and it can take a while to digest. And I always thought, well, if I can explain it and understand it simply, then that's going to help a lot of people, because people don't have time to read this thick book or whatever it may be. Like, people may not have the time to get through the whole of this, this other book that may not. So if I can simplify concepts, and that's what I try and do in Think Like a Monk, I'm simplifying the wisdom, the science, the stories and the strategies to actually change your life. And I see that as my role. And so I'm not trying to be a PhD. I'm not trying to be the most intellectual person in the world. I'm trying to be the person that can synthesize this for simple living. And I think that's where I really stepped into my own, of recognizing what value I offer to people's lives, rather than trying to be everything and anything. And so for me, I felt in the beginning, but like I said, because I've been making content offline for 10 years, when I went online, I just went for it. And I think the key thing is I've stayed learning and reading, and that's why I've loved doing my podcast so much, and why I'm such a fan of the platform and so excited that you're launching your podcast. And massive congratulations, and can't wait to see you interview loads of great people. I haven't stopped learning since I started, because that's the fun of it. Like, because I'm having to synthesize and curate and deeply understand, it means I have to keep reading and learning, and that's kind of what keeps me going.
I found that also, so I'm just on my first series with the podcast, but even I've interviewed almost everyone for the first series. And I, on that point we were talking about earlier, the real, who knows what will happen with it? I don't know. But what I do love is that I'm loving the process. I'm loving talking to the people. I'm loving doing it. And that's a great starting point, and then the rest, who knows? You open the book with that quote. It's a lovely quote, the one about, if you're looking for a new idea, look at an old book. And I love how you've broken down on that point, about curating. You've broken down the book into the 3 sections. Each one has 4 chapters, and each one is like little stories, and each section has a meditation. So it's really, really practical and bite-sized, I guess, which is something that I guess, you've really learned with creating content online. I think it's very much been... It's funny because podcasts are going the other way a bit, long form, but online, especially with videos, when you were starting, it was very much short form, right?
Yeah, and I think both serve a different purpose. So the book, in my opinion, allows you to do both. So I feel like video is short form and snackable, podcasts are long form and deep, and the book lets you do both. So to me, the book was the first medium that I felt I could do both. I could make something really simple, but then I could talk about it for a whole chapter. And that's what I loved about putting the book together, is that you could really present a full path. Because in a podcast or in a video, you can never present to someone the full mindset or the full path in one place. If you were to do a podcast on that, it could take 20 hours, and that's the audiobook. So it's almost like, and also having to synthesize it in a way that makes sense to people every step of the journey. And to me, I like structure, and I like showing, I felt the book allowed me to show different parts of my personality. So people will find lots of pop culture references. People will find lots of scientific studies and data. People will find loads of wisdom stories and Zen stories, because I really got to just completely immerse someone in my mind and my personality without having to, like, sometimes in the videos, like I can't always be as informal because I have to make a point.
You've got a lot to say, yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot to say. And then sometimes in the podcast, I may not be able to think of the perfect story at that time, or I may not be able to go and check the research on this particular item that's come to my mind. Whereas in the book, we could do that. So the book for me is a really comprehensive path for anyone who's like, I really want to transform my mind. I really want to find peace and purpose. This is the path. It's laid out.
And what I liked about it too is it's kind of like parallel your story, but at the same time, it's taking the reader on their journey through it at the same time, which is really, really cool. Well, going back as an observer, it seemed that every month or every 3 months or whatever it was, there was this another incredible breakthrough or incredible story. It was like 1 billion views, 2 billion views, the National Geographic, trying to encourage young people to come up with great ideas to change the world. So many exciting things were happening. And it really did seem like it was just, it couldn't get any better. And then it kind of did. So tell me a little bit about, because I'm guessing it wasn't all super easy on the inside going through all that. So tell me a little bit about that, such a fast rise and the success keeping going. Did you ever feel like you were hanging on, or the train was going so fast?
Yeah, I think that, so I was at HuffPost from till about 2017 March, beginning of March, when I decided that I really had to go my own way and build, because I wanted to create more content, more regular content. It wasn't just about going live every day for me. I wanted to build different types of content. I wanted that freedom. And at the same time, I put myself in a position where I was 4 months away from being broke, and
by leaving,
by parting ways and seeing that there was a different direction here. And it was almost like, I had to be open and honest with myself that I wanted to do more and create more and have more freedom. And that came at the cost of my visa was going to get canceled after 30 days and I would have to move back to London. And I had 4 months left till I'd run out of money after rent and groceries. And so in New York City,
it's expensive as well, right?
Expensive. And I'd had 100 million views and I was 4 months away from being broke. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, it makes zero sense. But the thing is, a lot of creators find themselves in this space because views doesn't equal stability or security or anything. And so when I was in that position, I woke up the next day and I remember emailing anyone I'd ever met, tweeting anyone I'd ever met, and basically asking for work. And 2017, I survived by editing videos for other companies, directing ads for other companies, which I wasn't in, working and partnering with as many brands as I could that would help me just stay afloat that year. And then, of course, paying for my visa. And so that was one of the toughest years of my life. I don't think I've ever felt that much stress. I don't think I felt that much pressure in my life. I just got married a year before then. And my wife wasn't allowed to work in the US because she was on my visa as a spouse visa. And so it's not like she could work and support as well. And so that was part of the challenge. And so we were just in this like really tough state. We lived in a tiny 500 square foot apartment in New York. And we both work from home. So there's two of us in this tiny space all day. I'm trying to go live and record a video, and Radhi's cooking and using the blender. And people are like, Jay, is that a blender in the background? Like, can you turn that off? We're trying to meditate with you. And so, just all of that kind of like really feeling like I was in a pressure cooker in 2017. And that's when I realized to myself, I was just like, this is the year where I have to start thinking differently. I've got to learn about different business models. I've got to learn about different types of content. I need to build partnerships. I need to think more strategically. Like now I need to get really organized. I've had this wonderful breakthrough and I've had this moment, but that's not good enough. And so I'd say for the first 2 years, I worked, I'd say 16 hours a day, 17 hours a day, and never took a weekend for 2 years. From 2017 to 2019. For 2 years, I didn't, and I'm so grateful I did it. I think the person who says it best, without using his language often, but Gary Vee, who's a good friend too, and he said something like, eat. I'm using another word, but eat crap for 2 years, and then you can eat caviar for the rest of your life. And I don't eat caviar. But I really heard that afterwards, but I realized that was very much the story of my life, that for 2 years I just went all in. I still managed to meditate. That really helped me hang on. I still managed to get good quality sleep, or try to get good quality sleep. But when I was awake and working. And that's what it took to find that continuous journey towards momentum. And I think not everyone has to do that. Like, you don't have to do that to yourself. But if you want the result that you see, then yes, that's the only way you can get there.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's kind of like, it's not like, oh, if you don't do that, you don't have a worthy life. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is live the life you want. But for me, having something that I was excited about, working on purposeful stuff, feeling like I wasn't complacent about the opportunity that we were building again and again and again, to me, that's what it took. And that's what I gave my all to. And by the way, when you're growing fast, you make mistakes. When you're growing fast, you're going to make the wrong decisions. You're going to sometimes give away too much for little money. You're going to sign bad contracts and then have to get out of it, and all of that stuff. And
did all of that stuff kind of happen? Did you go through those learning pains?
For sure. Like, I just think when you're trying to grow fast and you don't know, it's not an industry that's been mapped out for you. Like, you have that. You've built a career in something and built your company. And I mean, I see you winning awards every single year. And it's like, when you're winning awards every single year, it means you must have had to do something very unique and different every single year. You don't win an award every single year for doing the same thing. And so, but when you're doing that, you do end up making mistakes along the way. And so, yeah, I had to learn about contracts and negotiation. I had to learn about who really had the best intention and who didn't. I had to learn about how to manage a team and make sure they don't make mistakes. And so I've just realized that in the beginning, I think you have to get that momentum and speed. And you see that in the growth of Facebook. You see that in the growth of social media apps. And so I find, like, when you're moving fast, you learn faster. Whereas when you're moving slow, you learn slower, and therefore you can't even keep up with the times. I always stopped before I ever felt burnt out. I never let myself get to the point where I was like, God, this is like off the edge. But there were points that were close, and I'm grateful for those points, because they've made me more self-aware about what I need and what commitments to not lose for my life. So now, meditating, exercising, eating well. And this was, okay, this is the biggest thing. In all of that, I realized that the reason I was getting closer to burnout or having points is I wasn't living an optimal life. And what I mean by that is I wasn't getting optimal sleep, I wasn't eating the healthiest, and I wasn't meditating the best. And those simple 3 changes changed everything, because they expanded my energies and abilities. And so often we feel more tired and exhausted because we're not doing the things that fill us with strength and abundance and vitality.
Recharging the batteries. So as I say, literally, if you listed them out, the accolades and it's interesting too to get a little insight into the inside story, because obviously it was challenging at times, but to us on the outside, it was just like, God, is this ever going to end? There's another thing and another thing, another thing. It was incredible. So just tell me about, like, of all of the incredible things, one real high point that's sort of stands out for you from all of the great things that have happened.
Wonderful question. Thank you for allowing me to reflect on that. Let me think. What has been the biggest moment? I think definitely defining moments have been when I was able to be invited onto shows or meet people that I had a lot of connection to. So the first time I went on the Today Show, for me, that was such a big defining moment. And that was January 2019. No, sorry, I take that back. That was like February 2019. That was last year. It's crazy. Like that was last year. And it's like, that was huge. Going on the Ellen show last year was huge for me. I'll never forget that. Red Table Talk. Those were huge highlights because those were such defining moments, and they were those second tipping point or third tipping point in life. But I'd say that the biggest, most meaningful thing has been creating this genius community that we started in 2018. And it was my coaching group that we started. And the aim of it was I could never coach people one-on-one anymore because I wouldn't have the bandwidth. But how could we create a program and a community that could help people transform, help people grow and be consistent, almost like going for a community event every single week. And so we launched Genius in 2018. And every single week I go live with my Genius community in a live group. And so thousands of people from across the world join. And inside the group, they get meditations, they get video content, they get worksheets, they get a community of thousands of people across the world that are now really good friends and built a family atmosphere. And I get to take them through a curriculum every single month. So every single month I dive into one topic for 3 weeks, 45 minutes each week on that topic. And then the last week is a Q&A. And that, we've been running it for 2.5 years now. And the amount of depth of transformation that's brought in people's lives and the testimonials and how people feel from just being a part of that community, that to me is the most fulfilling one of the heart, because that's making me really believe that all of this works and it makes a difference. And now putting it all into a book, a lot of those principles, and being able to say, hey, this is what I learned in 3 years. But this is what I've experienced in the last 7 years as the exam. Monk Life was the school, and the last 7 years have been the exam. This is my guidebook to the test of the last 7 years. To be able to do that is really fulfilling.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it's true, the views and the sort of, I guess, somewhat, they're more external things, like meeting famous people and all that's all is really cool. I mean, great achievements. But as you say, being able to go deep and really change lots of people's lives in an everyday way, so that their lives are actually improved, and that's really wonderful.
Yeah, we've been on there for like over 2 years, and you think, wow, and of course credit to the people in there. But that's the answer to that one.
As anybody gets more successful, the stakes get higher. So can you think of a time, like a huge disappointment or letdown, or a particularly painful moment, and what it felt like and what it taught you?
I go to India every December or January to live in the ashram at the eco village again. And I've been doing that for the past 3 years with my wife since we've been married. And I used to always visit before when I wasn't married. And we go back every year. And so I was there. This was 2018 December or 2019 Jan. I was there, and we knew we were going to launch this podcast called On Purpose. And I'd already been and interviewed. I'd flew to Monaco to interview Novak Djokovic, who I'd been connecting with a lot. I'd interviewed Russell Brand because I've known him for some time. And I'd interviewed, who else had I interviewed at that time to start off the podcast? I think those were the two that and my wife, of course. My wife was my first podcast. So I'd interviewed all 3 of them. So I had my first 3 episodes ready to go. And I was about to sign this really big deal with this huge podcast production company, like huge deal. I was really excited. They were going to market it and billboards and whatever. It was meant to be really exciting. And I was in India, and I got back 2 weeks before the podcast was meant to launch, which is 14th of Feb 2019. And I get a call and an email from my lawyers and my team saying that they've pulled out because they don't think it's going to be a big podcast. That was their feedback. They were like, we don't think it's going to be a big podcast because you're a social media creator, and social media video creators talk for 4 minutes. No one's going to come and listen to you for 30 minutes or an hour because they're used to listening to you for 4 minutes. So we don't think you have an audience. And genuinely, like that was the thought process. And so I'm 2 weeks away from launching, and obviously I've got a million other things to do, and I've just got to come back from India, which means I've just been in a completely meditative state, and I haven't thought about work for like 3 weeks. And I'm thinking, I'm like, crap, literally, I've got 2 weeks to launch a podcast, and I have no idea how to do you're launching a podcast right now. I know how to record an interview and I know how to interview people, but I don't know how to like upload and, I don't know how to make sure to market it well. And I've never done that before. And I thought I was going to have all this support, and they've pulled the rug from under my feet. And now I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. And so I've spent all this money interviewing Novak and flying to Monaco and took my team. And I've put all this money up thinking that there was a deal here. And all of a sudden it's all disappeared. And I was definitely disappointed because we'd been working on the deal for like 3-4 months. So it wasn't like a flash in the pan deal. And so I had to scrap together in 2 weeks to launch the podcast, which we did. We launched on 14th February. The podcast is consistently in the top 10 on Chartable of the top 200 podcasts in the world.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Yeah, I listen to it all the time. I just want to say it's a really, really, really great podcast. Yeah.
Thank you, man. And it's my heart. Like I didn't say the podcast was one of my highlights. It definitely is. From a creative point of view, the podcast is probably my favorite thing I get to create. And it's just, that was so tough. But again, my life consistently reminds me that when you get forced to do something on your own, it just builds more confidence in yourself. When you wait for someone to give you a handout, or you wait for someone to give you an opportunity, or you're waiting for someone to give you that moment, it's like you always have to do it yourself. And when you do it yourself, you own 100% of it. You get to do what you want with it creatively, and no one can then tell you what to do with it. And so it's like it's really a confidence boost again when you get put under pressure and feel nervous for a second, and then you really go all in on it. And I've really gone all in on the podcast, as you know how much work it takes to find the guests, get to know the guests, interview the guests, release it. Podcast is some of the hardest piece of content you can create. So yeah, that was the moment I felt the most disappointed and scared, because I'd put all this money up, I'd invested in it, I'd worked hard, and all of a sudden it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. And it's very, very interesting, that point you make, because there's a real tension between two truisms, I guess. One is that when others don't believe in this, or they don't come along on a horse like we might like them to and sort of give us the ticket, that we have to dig deep and believe in ourselves. But at the same time, it's also when somebody does believe in this, like Ariane, or along the way, if we're fortunate, we don't want to be waiting for those. But when they do happen, it's also wonderful. Totally.
And yeah, I mean, that's a great way of putting it. And I think it's always going to be here and there and that stuff. And yeah, you don't know which one you're going to get. And that's why I think it's so important to just stand on your own 2 feet, fly your own kite, and keep pushing.
Yeah, sure. I have huge admiration for you. One of the things that really made me sort of really have deep respect for you is because if I was your age, I'm a bit older than you, but if I was your age and I got that kind of level of fame, I think at your age, I probably would have lost it, if I'm really honest. I randomly picked 3 bits out of the book, just 1 bit from each of the sections. The first one was from the let go part, and it's about forgiving ourselves. And it's quite nice on that section because we all have things, whether it's from like recent years or when we were young or whatever, that if we don't forgive ourselves, they can have a lot of power over us and really hold us back. So I loved that. I love that section. In the middle section, which is about grow, I loved the bit you mentioned about the ego makes us liars. And I've noticed this in my own life. Like sometimes I find myself exaggerating a little bit and I don't realize I'm doing it. My wife always picks me up on it.
Wives are the best. They're the best.
Yeah. And then the last bit, which I thought was lovely in the give bit, was the circle of love. I wondered if you'd just say something very briefly on that circle of love, because it's, let's say we are, there's a great saying, most people are doing their best, or all people are doing their best, and they're going out into the world. But just tell me that story about the circle of love. I think it's really insightful.
Yeah. So I approached one of the monks in the ashram early on, and I was just saying, I'm giving so much love out to everyone. I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm loving, I give my best energy to everyone. But I said to him, I often just don't feel it back from them. Like I'm just I'm just pouring out this love and energy to everyone. I'm not feeling it back from them. And he could have given me an answer that was like, oh yeah, but that's not the point, and you should just give love out because that's what you're meant to do. And his answer was just so much more powerful, comforting, but also real. And he said to me, he said, well, there are people in life that you will give love to and won't give love back to you. And there are people in your life that will give love to you and you won't give love back to them. And that's what he called the circle of love. And he said that you will always receive the exact and equal amount of love that you give in this world. You just won't get it from the places you expect it. And it's your expectation that makes you feel you're not loved, because you expect it to come back from the person you give it to, not realizing that it's more likely to come from a completely different source that you're paying no attention to. And so for me, that really opened up my eyes. And I've realized that sometimes I'm giving love to a lot of people, and the love I receive is through my mentors, my teachers, my coaches, my mom. Like, I have so much love in my life, but often I'm looking for love from a completely different source. So that's the circle of love that he shared.
Yeah, it's a really brilliant point, because it can be very disappointing if you are hanging on to get it from a particular person, and then you can mistakenly think, am I not worthy? Am I not? Why are they not loving me? And all of these things, and it can really be debilitating. So that's a lovely way to look at it. I know on your podcast you have your sort of final 5. This is a slight variation on that. It's 6 things. I call them the big pillars of life.
Okay.
And I just ask you to say a couple of sentences on each one. It could be kind of where you're at now with these things, but also where's the evolution been for you on those things. So the first one is family. Okay.
And do you mean my family is my parents, or my family is my wife?
However you see it, just family as a concept, or as a pillar.
I think family is something that you have to figure out your relationship with each person very early on, and figure out your expectations with each person very early on. I think when you have that clarity, family can either be the greatest force of growth or something that you feel is holding you back. But if you know your relationship with each person in your family, it can be a force for growth and good.
Families can be complex, but there's lots of learning for sure. There's actually a monk saying, isn't there, like, when you think you're enlightened, you should spend a week with your family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. Family has so many beautiful lessons in it. So for sure.
Next one is friendship.
Yeah, friendship. I realized that, at least in my life, the friends that have lasted the longest are the friends that don't want to compete with me, and friends I don't want to compete with. And I've never been competitive with my friends. So I've always wanted equality, and I've always wanted mutual love and respect for each of the people in my life. And I remember as early as being a young man and having friends that were like, oh, well, who's going to get more girls' numbers today? And I'd always be like, why is that even why is that a measurement in your head? Like, I don't want to do that. Why can't we just both be happy for each other and wherever this night goes or whatever? And so to me, even today, the friends that have really lasted in my life are the friends that I have love and respect for who they are, whatever they're doing. And they have love and respect for what I'm doing. And there's no competition. There's just an appreciation for the different offerings. And I think that's what friendship is to me.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice. There's actually one of my other guests, Glenn Hansard, he's a musician. He has a lovely line in a song. He says, there's no comfort in the eyes that put us always to the test. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Love.
Love is have to be careful about this one, because love gets thrown around a lot. So love is full sacrifice and surrender. That's what love is. Love is full sacrifice and surrender. No gaps, no limitations. As we know in the sacred verse is unmotivated and uninterrupted. That's what love is. It's unmotivated, uninterrupted, and full of sacrifice and surrender.
And is there, people might think that's sort of self-suicide.
Yeah, I think it can be if you. I mean, I was talking about love for my passion and my purpose. If I think about love in terms of people, I think of love being as a complete respect for someone's authentic self. I think one of the biggest mistakes in relationships is trying to change people to be like us when we fell in love with them for being like them. And it's a weird one because I think that's, me and my wife have really worked on that, where I don't think I've really changed since she met me, and I don't think she's changed, and I don't want her to change. I in the sense of everyone's always growing and evolving, that change is good, but what I mean is I don't want her to change for me. I want to love her more and for her to become more herself. Yeah. I want to become more myself. That's the change I want. I don't want to become more of her, and I don't want her to become more of me. I think that's what love isn't, and love is the other.
Yeah, lovely. Health.
Oh, health is the most underrated thing in the world. I have prioritized my mental health and neglected my physical health for as long as I know. And in the last 2-3 years, my physical health became a massive priority, and it has changed and upgraded my mental health and my physical abilities. And it's something that should not be traded at any cost. It's just should not be underestimated. I think you only realize how powerful health is when you get older. I thought I was Superman 10 years ago, and now I'm like, I get it. Like, I really, really get it. So to me, health is something that should not be underestimated for a second.
Yeah, true. It's the irony, isn't it? They say youth is wasted on the young. It's nowadays maybe not so much because there's more opportunity to become wise even as a younger person. But I think, sometimes we only learn it when we get older. Money.
So money is something I had to rewire my relationship with. So I would encourage everyone to rewire their relationship with money. And often we have an unhealthy relationship with money. Just like we have an unhealthy relationship with a parent or an unhealthy relationship with a fear, we have unhealthy relationships with money. My relationship with money was always, I have just enough. I grew up so often seeing £0 in my bank account and often being in overdraft and trying to pay it back to be back at zero. And I survived my teenage life like that. I survived some of my adult life like that because I had just enough. And I had to realize that I grew up with certain beliefs that if you had money, you had to do something wrong to get it, or there was some greed there. And I had to change that and realize, well, money was just another resource and another tool that could be used to serve the world. And when I started to realize, like, if you want to have a company and you want to hire more people to do their purpose, you need to pay for that. If you want to make bigger and cooler videos and have better guests on the podcast and you need to travel to them, or you need to have the best cameras or whatever it is, that costs money. And if you wanted to learn about things that you could never learn about before, that needed money. And I just started to realize that we have so many unhealthy beliefs about making, keeping, saving, and investing money. And I would ask everyone to rewire and recreate their own relationship with money.
Yeah, it's so true. It's such a, it's a lot of times people don't feel that they deserve, like there's something wrong with being rich, or they don't deserve to be rich or whatever.
Yeah, and it often reflects in seeing other people with wealth, and we think, oh, well, they must have done something bad to get it, or look how greedy they are. And it's actually like, well, there's a beautiful statement by Peter Diamandis that we should redefine the word billionaire as someone who changes the lives of 1 billion people. And the truth is that if you are impacting the lives of 1 billion people, there will naturally be a financial exchange. It's why Jeff Bezos is the most wealthy man in the world, because he's created something that we all want to use and need, and say that we have a need for it. Otherwise, he would not be that. And so if there is a need for what you do, if there is a value in what you do, people will pay for it. And that is a beautiful exchange, because now you use that. And this is the point, right? That more money is not the goal. More money is another tool that can be used to serve people. And I think as long as it's used in that way and seen in that way, there's a beautiful quote by I believe it's an Islamic author. I forget his exact name. but he said that detachment doesn't mean that you own nothing. Detachment means that nothing owns you. And that to me is what everything in the world is, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's beauty, whether it's power, whether it's strength. As long as it never owns you, you can own all of it and serve with it. And if you're serving with it, then it will never own you. If you are selfishly just exploiting it, it will own you. But if you're serving with it, it will never own you.
Oftentimes we hear success doesn't bring happiness. If success doesn't bring happiness, what does it bring?
Success brings, so yeah, I agree. I think happiness and success are two different journeys. I see success as accolades, rewards, achievements, which don't make you happy, they make you successful. And happiness comes from how I feel about myself, the inner mind, the inner peace, the satisfaction and the fulfillment of what I do and who I know. And so to me, they are both different paths. Being happy doesn't make you successful, and being successful doesn't make you happy. Being successful makes you successful. It makes you feel like you've achieved something. It makes you give a sense of learning and confidence. But that doesn't make you happy. What gives you a sense of happiness is feeling like you're loved and you love people, feeling like you're making a difference in the world. So I always say that I have pursuits in my life for success, but I also have pursuits in my life for happiness. I see them as different pursuits that don't necessarily affect each other as directly as we often think. I don't think just because you're happy, you're more successful.
No, true. But I think in terms of success does bring you more influence, doesn't it?
Correct. So yeah, so success can bring you influence, it can bring you success, it can bring you wealth, it can bring you power, but none of those things will bring you happiness. And that's my point, that it can bring you all of that stuff, which is all useful and great, but it doesn't make you happy. Your happiness is totally based on your relationship with yourself and your relationship with others.
Interesting. And the last one is creativity and expression, self-expression. How does that play a role in your life?
I just am constantly trying to create and express myself in any way that I'm inspired. Recently, we started this series of videos, which is me coaching coaching in movies. So I did one with Spider-Man, where I'm coaching Tom Holland as Spider-Man, not real Tom Holland, but Tom Holland in the movie. And I did another one with La La Land, which is another movie I love, and I'm coaching Emma Stone as her character in La La Land. And that, it's very different for me. It's comedic content, it's parody, it's not what I'm known to do or what I have built a brand doing, but I feel like that's the point of getting to where you want to get to, that you can then explore and do what you want. So I'm kind of like, there's no point in working so hard to get to a position to not then do what you creatively want to do. And so I'm always taking risks in my creativity or trying new things. We've done a lot of social experiment type formats and content lately, but creativity, really what it means to me is just allowing myself to think about how I can understand something simply and share it with people so it's simple for them as well. That's what creativity is for me. It's creating something that speaks to my heart and someone else's, not just mine. And I think that beautiful symbiotic nature is what makes creativity so exciting, because when I put out a video of me coaching Spider-Man or Emma Stone in La La Land, and I get all the comments back saying this is hilarious or disconnected from me, it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And I love, I was going to say, what's the master plan? I suppose you've definitely got that great slogan, making wisdom go viral, which is super. And you've shared, so many ways, including with the book, the podcast, the Genius Coaching Group, the videos, how you're trying to do that. Is there a new phase to all of this? Is there a bigger kind of longer term plan that you have that you're working towards?
Yeah, the master plan has always been to build the pathway and bridge from entertainment to education to personal enlightenment. So I believe that there's a lot of entertainment content out there that's educational. There's a lot of educational content that's out there that's entertaining. But what I've been really trying to do in my life is build the pathway so that if someone watches a video and they like it, then there's another step for them. If they listen to the podcast and they like it, there's another step for them. If they like the book, then there's another step for them. So my goal is one day to be able to take retreats to India and for people to experience monk life for a week, to experience what it may feel like. But that to me is not something that everyone has to do or wants to do or will do, but I want to create that pathway so that if someone wants to go all the way from entertainment to enlightenment, that there is a path for them to follow. Because sometimes people want to do the next step and they want to grow, but they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And I feel that's been one of the letdowns of spirituality, of traditions. And one of the challenges is giving people a coherent pathway that feels like an incremental change as opposed to a massive leap. And so to me, that's the big long-term vision of how do we really impact through entertainment, but give people the opportunity to find their own enlightenment if that's what they want.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So like meeting people where they are, giving them all the steps and let them go as far as they're inspired, I guess, right?
Totally. No force, no pressure, no judgment. Just it's almost like if someone comes in and goes, I want to do a harder workout. And you say, okay, next week we've got level 2. And then they come back and go, I want to do a harder workout. And you're like, oh, sorry, we're not really sure if there is a level 3 and a level, and there's no growth. And I think people are looking for growth in the next step. But there has to be provided in a way that there's no force or judgment, but that people can grow at their own pace in their own time.
I love it. Yeah, it's brilliant, Jay. Everything you're doing is, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate, the effort you put into it, but also I know it's in my own very small relative way. I know there's a lot of sacrifice and hard work and everything that goes into it. So, my respect to you.
No, you know it too, and I love seeing you win every year and crushing it in your career. I mean, I really feel what you've done has been inspiring, because to leave monk life, and you did it for longer than I did, to leave monkhood and have to recreate your passion, figure out who you are, and build a career in the way you have and a platform. I mean, that is so difficult. It is so difficult, and it's easy to kind of just think that it happens for people. But, like I said, if you're winning awards every year, it means you're doing something different every year. And I'm really grateful to have you in my life. I'm grateful for this conversation, and I'm inspired by you too. And I hope that you continue to become more and more aligned with your dharma and your purpose, and keep making a wonderful impact in the world. So grateful and excited to have this conversation in 25, 30 years and look back and see what we were able to do.
Absolutely. Just to come back to the book, what's so wonderful about the book? You mentioned there, both of us coming out of spending time as a monk. I often use the analogy, it was like re-entering the Earth's atmosphere after being in outer space. It is such a, and you see it in the movies, like it's bouncing and shaking, the whole the spaceship shaking and everything. It's a really, really big deal. So what's lovely about all the content you're creating in this book is that you are, giving people the chance to learn these lessons and not take, such a big and bold step, but still benefit and integrate it into their own life. So it's wonderful. Where can they get the book, Jay?
For anyone who's in the UK, if that's where most of the audience is, then you can actually get a signed copy from Waterstones. But for everyone else, it's thinklikeamonkbook.com. If you're international audience, or if you listen to this across the world, if you go to thinklikeamonkbook.com, we've created a link tree of every possible place you can buy the book in every country. It's going to be in about 40 languages in total over the next 12 months. Grateful to everyone in any country who's going to pick up the book.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, Jay. I really appreciate it. And
great.
Look forward to catching you somewhere along the way in the future.
Yeah, for sure. This was awesome, Ravi. Thank you so much. And I hope it's good for your audience. And let me know when it's out. I'd love to promote it. So send me
thanks so much.
Like video cuts and whatever and all the rest of it.
Lovely. Take care, Jay.
Ravi, take care. Have a good day. Thank you for doing this on Saturday again.
It was so good talking to Jay. He's such a nice guy, and I really love what he's doing in the world. Make sure to get a copy of his book. I've started reading it already. It's really, really, really good. Really, really practical, really well laid out. It's a really great roadmap to making step-by-step progress towards thinking like a monk and all of the great benefits that come with that. If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It's so great to see what you're taking away from it and to read your reviews. As always, I'll see you on the next podcast, and in the meantime, have a great week.